We interrupt the Jimmy Fallon Show to bring you breaking news tonight. John Bruning lost tonight. Pete Ricketts is your winner for the Republican gubernatorial race. Pete Ricketts just making his Pete Ricketts making his victorious speech just a few minutes ago. John Bruning about, I don't know, 15 minutes ago. Katie calling to concede.
And those votes extremely close, as you can see on your screen there, just a few hundred votes off from each other. Both of them at 27%. Pete Ricketts obviously did win that, and you can see John Bruning tweeted just a couple minutes ago, "I have called Ricketts for governor to concede. Sometimes you fight hard and come up short. Thank you for all of my supporters." Bruning tweeting that just a few minutes ago, as well as, "I am proud of the campaign I ran from the bottom of my heart. Thank you." And
we also want to mention Pete Ricketts, as you can see, if we take his Twitter account and you scroll down with the caption, "We can move forward together," the Twitter picture is he now obviously victorious. And Katie, the big news out of this is we thought last week when Governor Hyman backed John Bruning that was the push that he needed to win this race. But from the beginning tonight, it was Pete Ricketts by just a little bit, and he held off the whole night.
That's right, and Bruning really surged in the polls the last couple of weeks, too, especially after that endorsement. He really just shot up there.
And Pete Ricketts, we all wondered how those endorsements of Sarah Palin, Ted Cruz would pay off, and obviously it might have meant a lot to the voters. Pete Ricketts, obviously, we all know, the billionaire businessman, doesn't have a political background like John Bruning does, but obviously the voters ready for a little bit of a change, because when Hyman backed Bruning, Pete Ricketts said, well, I guess some voters want status quo. If that's what they want, then go with John Bruning, and that's not what the voters decided tonight.
Yeah, and like we told you, though, very close out there. We just had a couple hundred votes in between the two of them as of right now, but he did just step off the stage just moments ago after giving his acceptance speech out there tonight.
And John Bruning, this is an interesting part of the race, is he dropped out of running for Attorney General again so he could run for governor. Who can forget a few years ago when he ran for U.S. Senate and lost, and now losing in the governor's race. So you wonder what's next for John Bruning.
That's right. And a couple years ago when he did run for U.S. Senate, he was one of those top runners, as you'll remember, and Senator Deb Fischer slid right in at the last moment. And once again, it looks like he was at the very top and just barely lost again.
And if we can, I don't know if we can take those numbers once again, just to show you how close it really was percentage-wise. Look at that, 27%, 27%. And then when you pull up here the Secretary of State's website that we look at, it was just, I think it's 1,000 votes or so, Katie?
Yeah, and you can see those votes there on your screen. Pete Ricketts was at, it looks like 26% here on our screen. If we can pull up that graphic one more time, it's a little more updated for you guys. There you go. Votes there for Pete Ricketts, 32,900 and 32,335 there for Bruning. Also pretty interesting too, look at Beau McCoy. He actually came in third there, right below Mike Foley, and for a while there Foley was ahead in the races too.
And it's just interesting. This is such a highly contested race. We sometimes forget this is obviously the primary election. The general election will be held in November. That's when they'll face Chuck Hasselbrook, obviously, for the Democratic side, will run against Pete Ricketts. So finally, after months and months of the ads, and we know that those two had a back and forth in those negative ads, you wonder if that played a factor on voters today.
It could have paid off for him as well. And also tonight, too, we did have Ben Sasse did lead and win for the U.S. Senate race, too.
And defeating Shane Osborne. Actually, Sid Dinsdale was closer in second place. For months, we thought it was between Shane Osborne and Ben Sasse. We thought that would be a close race. Ben Sasse pulled away very, very early in the evening. Ben Sasse also backed by former Governor Kay Orr. That's who also backed Pete Ricketts.
Yeah, so pretty interesting for our statistics. And also you can see on your screen there that Ben Sasse had nearly 50% of those votes. He gave his acceptance speech hours ago.
And the governor, Heineman, has been the governor of the state for 9 years, a popular governor. Everybody thought that when he backed John Bruning or whoever he would have chosen, they would be the next governor, and it's not going to work out that way.
Didn't work out that way. And Attorney General John Bruning, current Attorney General right now, he's held his seat and worked alongside with Governor Heineman for over a decade now.
And we also have to remember that Pete Ricketts putting out his ag plan, that was very important to him, and we talked to him about repealing Obamacare, what he would like to change, and he said it's job training that's important so people can get these benefits. He thought that's a way to handle this Obamacare for those people who fall in that gap from Obamacare.
And overall, this primary election, extremely rare. It's the first time the governor's seat and the U.S. Senate seat have been opened at the same time since 1978, so a very rare primary election for us here in Nebraska.
And obviously Pete Ricketts tonight in Lincoln. John Bruning as well was in Lincoln. Pete Ricketts, if I'm correct, was at the Cornhusker giving his concession speech just a moment, not too long ago. News 5's Lauren Conley has been moving back. We hope to check in with her in a little bit, hopefully in a few minutes with her report. She's kind of been running back between Ben Sasse in the Senate campaign and then obviously with Pete Ricketts and Bruning.
And of course she's been at all 3 of those stops tonight. We'll have much more tomorrow morning on News 5 Today. We'll hear from all of those different stops that she made. We'll hear from Ricketts and Bruning and Sasse.
And if you remember, John Bruning was one of the last people to get into this race, so I don't know if that had played a factor. He obviously gained a lot of momentum late, and maybe he wanted to come in late because he's had a rough go of things. Let's not forget John Bruning battling cancer at the same time as this campaign has gone on. So if you think about where this campaign was, I don't know, maybe a year ago or even further, it started with Lieutenant Governor Rick Sheehy maybe being a favorite. Now obviously not in the race.
Right, and that was who Governor Heineman initially backed before he stepped down. Also, let's bring it closer to home, too, for the Grand Island mayoral race. And Mayor Vavricek, current Mayor Vavricek, just put out a tweet earlier tonight. I'll see if I can pull that up here, too. But just minutes ago, he put out a tweet about the current race right now, too, because those 2 candidates are going to be moving on. And he was in 3rd place at the time. So I'll try and pull that up here for you guys and see if I can pull up exactly what he said. Here we go. He said, "Thanks again to everyone who's been involved with the campaign. Didn't go as I hoped, but it was a great team effort. Hashtag thank you."
Chuck Hasse and Jeremy Jensen are moving on in that race. Chuck Hasse, serving on city council, has some experience. Jeremy Jensen doesn't have any political experience, very popular in the community as a financial advisor and as the Grand Island High soccer coach. So he's obviously a popular person. And the interesting thing about his race was he didn't use any yard signs or campaigns.
Not a lot of advertising.
No, he didn't. And he said tonight, when we interviewed him on News 5 at 10, he says he's not going to change that as he moves forward to November.
And a big week for him, too.
State soccer coming up, too. He now has to shift his focus to coaching again. And it'll be interesting. We already saw on News 5 today, Chuck Hasselbrook has begun the ads. At 10 o'clock, when they were announcing this race for governor, he was already running his first ad, so he's already off and running for the November election.
And in the mayoral race, we do want to mention that Jay Vavricek came in at, I think, 19% at the last check. So that was pretty interesting, too, and we'll have much more on that tomorrow.
I know, it's not often that you see the incumbent, and he's been, he served the term before and then came back as mayor, and then obviously some controversy that surrounded his last term. It's a little surprising that he wasn't in that top 2. I know it caught me off guard. I thought it could have been Jensen and Vavricek or Hasse.
Right, it did, and by such a wide margin, too. Pretty surprising.
But once again, the big news of the night, Governor, could be future Governor Pete Ricketts, I should say. I don't want to jump ahead of myself because obviously he has to face
winning
Chuck
the
Hasselbrook.
Republican ticket.
Exactly, and John Bruning obviously finishing 2nd in that race. And then Mike Foley and Bo McCoy were in the back there. Mike Foley, a lot of experience with state auditor, and then you start to think, as you look forward, who's going to be maybe a lieutenant governor? Who goes beside Pete Ricketts? That's something we like to keep a close eye on.
Who's going to take those other seats? Let's take another look at some of our other polls here, and we can bring you some of those elections as we're waiting. Like we said, we're going to be live in Lincoln in just a few minutes here if you hang on with us. We do have Lauren Conley there live for us tonight, and she was at the Ricketts speech tonight as he was giving his speech just moments ago. Let's talk about, you want to talk about the Senate race again, or?
Well, we can talk about Dave Domina, obviously, is going to be facing off against Ben Sasse, and Ben Sasse has said, let's change Washington, and Ben Sasse has been strong about, hey, let's build the pipeline, stop waiting. Dave Domina, as we all know, one of the attorneys fighting against getting the Keystone Pipeline built here in Nebraska.
Right, and Dave Domina took nearly 70% of those votes so far across the table there. As for governor, you can see those votes coming in very close. Bo McCoy in 3rd, and Mike Foley came out in 4th place. Tom Carlson and Brian Sloan had about 4% of those votes tonight each across the state. Secretary of State, of course, John Gale taking that one as a solo run. State Treasurer Don Stenberg holding his title once again with 85% of the vote.
And Don Stenberg obviously knows John Bruning very well. A few years ago, those two got in a little negative ad back and forth, and Deb Fisher slipped in. We thought, could that happen this year in the governor's race? And obviously it did not, because it didn't hurt Pete Ricketts. I know the two pointed each other, fingers at each other, who's running the negative ads, but it didn't affect the voters.
Yeah, and we even asked them when we interviewed them a few days ago even if they thought those negative ads would hurt them in their campaign run, but it looks like it did pay off across the area. Attorney General, now John Bruning, like I said, has held that position for over a decade, and you can see that Doug Peterson looks like he'll be taking that title with 35% of the votes so far at this hour, and that's followed by Brian Bisher and Mike Hilgers.
Brian Bisher, a Deweese, Nebraska native, just not too far from here at our studio, so someone has some big shoes to fill for John Bruning. Obviously, he was a lot of times in the Supreme Court, was one of the top lawyers fighting against the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid expansion, so whoever takes over that Attorney General's office, it'll be interesting to see if they're at the forefront of those fights as well.
Right, and Mike Foley, of course, was in the race for governor, and so that did open up the state auditor position, and so we will have a new state auditor. Charlie Jansen looks like he'll be the state auditor with, or at least for the Republican ticket, I should say. So let me get ahead of myself. But he came in with 56% of those votes, and he will be facing Amanda McGill on the Democratic ticket. Of course, she was unopposed, so had 100% of those votes there.
And we continue. We're going to hopefully bring you Lauren Conley in just a few minutes, so bear with us.
We promise we will.
Back and forth. We're trying to use the great world of technology right here, but once again, we want to mention, if you're just kind of maybe tuning in to catch Jimmy Fallon or the Late Late Show, John Bruning is defeated by Pete Ricketts. Pete Ricketts is your winner tonight for the Republican GOP. Nomination for gubernatorial candidate. And
while we have it up here, let's take a look at some of the Adams County races. Now, obviously, the last time it was updated was at 10:21 p.m., so about an hour ago. But we do have a winner for sheriff, and that's current sheriff Greg McGee.
Defeating Rick Hallett, who we saw a lot of those choose Hallett on the ballot, and it did not pay off with nearly 80% of the vote. And I think I just heard from our producer, we do have News 5's Lauren Conley, who's been covering the Senate and gubernatorial race. Lauren, we'll take it to you. Pete Ricketts, obviously the winner.
Katie and Colin, we are joined here with Pete Ricketts. Pete, how is it feeling? It was so neck and neck for you.
Yeah, it was a close race. We expected it to be a close race. You know, all the candidates in this race put up a tough fight. I'm grateful to be the winner here tonight, and it was through the work of thousands of folks all across the state who supported me. You don't do this alone. You do it with the help of a great campaign team, all the folks in my county organizations that turned out folks to vote, put up signs. It really is a team effort.
You know, and I was here earlier speaking with you, and it was right after those initial results had come out, and you were ahead then by a small margin. And you were excited, but I could tell you were trying not to get your hopes up too much. But you know, was it surprising? Were you expecting this to happen?
Well, we were confident because of, again, the grassroots organization we put together, the broad-based support we have, that we would have a good outcome tonight. But again, you don't want to count your chickens ahead of time, so we wanted to restrain ourselves. But of course, this is just one step too. We got a lot more work left to do to get to November.
And some of the things that we've talked about are the differences between you and John Bruning. And for you, I mean, it's really your experience in the private sector. Let's talk about how you want to use that to make a difference for Nebraska.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we need reform in the state. We're a high-tax state. We need to bring those down. To do that, we need to cut the cost and size and scope of government, and we can do that. We have to just use those things we learned in the private sector to be able to apply to it. And that's why you need somebody from the outside to do that. And so I think that's the choice Nebraska's made tonight, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to be able to do it.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Lauren.
Katie and Colin, back to you guys.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Pete Ricketts is a calm man. I mean, you can tell he's excited, but he's not getting too excited. He knows there's another race in November.
And quite a crowd out there, too. They're not staying calm. They're pretty excited behind her.
All right, once again, Pete Ricketts is your winner by just a little bit over John Bruning tonight.
That's right, for the Republican ticket, and we'll have much more on this, of course, tomorrow morning on News 5 Today. We're also going to have Superintendent Craig Couts on for us tomorrow morning as well, talking about that school bond issue that seemed to pass tonight, too.
And 71% to 28 last check. So.
Pretty interesting. So thank you guys so much for choosing us tonight for your election coverage. For now, we're going to throw it to the Late Late Show with Seth Meyers. Have a great night, everyone.